have tried to film this video 3 times now. This is my 3rd, and hopefully it will work. It's just a review of books that I've been reading, but I want to try to do it one more time. And so I'm just gonna jump right in, and we're gonna get started because I want to get it over with. So the first book that I want to tell you guys about is one that I DNF'd. I started it as my mammoth for March of the Mammoths, and it was A Day of Fallen Night. I got about 650 pages in, and it just was not coming together for me. It wasn't, I was avoiding picking it up. It was not making sense. The writing is beautiful, and I was enjoying the dragons, and I enjoyed the Priory of the Orange Tree so much, but this one I wasn't enjoying at all. So I DNF'd that one and decided to pick up a different one for March of the Mammoths. So I'll tell you about that in just a minute, but I wanted to let you know that I did DNF The Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. I'm gonna go ahead and just tell you about my middle grade March reads so far this last 8, 9, 10 days, however long it's been since I did a last wrap up this last time. So the first one is The Secret Letters. This is by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I thought this was good. It's not a new favorite or anything, but it is about a boy and a girl from sort of opposing families in a small town that they both clean out houses for a living. Their families do. And the boy discovers some letters under the floorboard in an attic in a house. And in the process of trying to locate the other end of those letters, he ends up befriending the youngest daughter of the opposing family in town. And the two of them become very good friends and begin to solve some mysteries together. And that is basically what it is. It is about friendship. It is about sacrifice and what we're willing to sacrifice in order to have real, true loyalty, friendship, and those kinds of things in our lives. I then read Mirrorwood, The Mirrorwood by Deva Fagan. This is again about a family. It is a family with 3 sets of twins. One of the youngest set of twins ends up with what is called a blight. This is sort of a curse, I guess, on humanity. And in this kingdom, you are not to go near the wood because the Mirrorwood is where the blights come from. In the Mirrorwood itself, they're called the twists, and the youngest twin ends up deciding that she doesn't want to live with this blight any longer, and she doesn't want her family to be in danger because of her. And so she takes off into the Mirrorwood to see if she can be the one that ends this blight on humanity. And it was good also. Again, not a new favorite, and it was a fun adventure. There were a couple of little problems with it, in my opinion, but not something that would have kept me from reading it at all. Then I read the Pridane Chronicles. These are by Lloyd Alexander, and this was a reread for me. I reread all 5 books. See if I can The Book of Three, The Black Cauldron, The Castle of Lear, Terran Wanderer, and The High King. And this is about a young boy who has been orphaned, supposedly, and does not know his origins, and he has this real sense of wanting to be a knight and wanting to be an adventurer and going on quests and this kind of thing. And he just happens to live with a very powerful wizard and a pig keeper, supposedly. And each book has a little bit further advancement of his age and his story. So it's very much a coming of age. It's very much adventure and high fantasy. And it was just lovely to be back in that world. It is an all-time favorite series, and I just love it. I just love it. Can't recommend it highly enough. And then the next one that I read was The Genius of Willie McMichael. This is by George MacDonald. He was a real influence on C.S. Lewis and even Tolkien. George MacDonald is better known for his fairy tales. This one happens to be a novel, and it is a novel about a young boy who appears to, everything he does feels a little bit magical, but all it really is that he is just gifted at what he sets his hand and his mind to. And so from a very, very young age, he has learned how to read, and nobody else in his village really knows how to read besides his own father and mother. And so, as a result of that, he begins to teach people how to read, and they begin to teach him their craft. And so he learns shoemaking, and he learns blacksmithing, and he learns net making. And he is very creative and comes up with solutions for things that nobody else has thought of. But what he really wants is to use these incredible gifts that he has to help other people. And so that becomes his whole goal in life, is to discover a way that he can best use his talents to bless the lives of other people. And it also was a reread for me, and I loved every minute. It was wonderful. Then I'm going to go over the adult books that I have read. So I read Princess Bari, which I found out is actually pronounced Bari. I read this with Katja Weinert. I cannot remember if I've already reviewed this book, so if I have, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to do it again really quick. So we have the story of the seventh daughter in a family of all girls, and her grandmother lives with her family. Her grandmother has a gift that is kind of passed down through the generations of women, and that gift is to be able to understand the future, to have dreams and to understand those dreams, to sometimes walk in the land of the dead, almost in an out-of-body experience, and to be able, they have these dreams and understand them in order to be able to help. And that takes different forms. The help does, I mean, that takes different forms. Her family is in North Korea, and they are separated by no fault of their own, but they end up separated, and she eventually ends up alone and escapes into China and then onto a ship that takes her into Europe, London specifically, and she then has to try to make a life. During this whole time, one of the ways that she really survives is by having these dreams and visions and out-of-body experiences where she is able to communicate with her family in this other realm. And it, for the first, I would say, third of the book, is very magical. It has that folklore, fairy tale-esque kind of feeling, but you are not expecting anything to feel modern day, and yet it is modern day. So this takes place in the late 80s, early 90s. So it was a typical Korean book for me in the fact that it was very melancholy. It was very difficult to read, and I was really happy to have Katja reading it with me. I don't think I would have finished it if it wouldn't have been for her, and I'm really glad that I did finish it. We do not finish on a nice wrapped up little bow kind of finish. It leaves quite a few questions, and you are still wondering about some things, and you're hopeful, but it's hard to be hopeful because of everything that just hit one after another in this story. So Princess Bari, this is by Hwang Yong. I then read Whale Day by Billy Collins. He is our poet laureate, and so I really wanted to read some of his work. All of the poems in this book are very short, and I wouldn't say any of them were really hard-hitting or impactful. One of the poems in Billy's book mentions another poet, and that poet is Patrick Pearse, and he references one of Patrick's poems, and that is a lullaby of a woman of the mountain. And so I proceeded then to read Patrick's poem, which I absolutely loved. And you can find it online. I'll leave a link to it in the description box for you guys. It's short also, but it's so good that people have actually made it into a song. And so you can also find songs of a lullaby of a woman of the mountain online. Then I read the Medici Manuscript. Let's try that again. Then I read the Medici Manuscript. This is by C.J. Archer, and it is book 2 in the Glass Library series. Our main character who doesn't know her history, and this is an alternate London of the 1920s after the First World War is over, and we are discovering that women can play a role besides mother, besides wife, besides housekeeper. And our main character takes a job in a library and wants to discover more about her own heritage, because in this alternate London, one of the things is that certain families have passed down through the generations the ability to do magic. And so she has somebody that is helping her with that, and there are mysteries that are kind of on the side. And both books so far have been very, very good. I've really enjoyed them. Then I read Rise of Empire. This became my mammoth for the month. This is book 2 in the Rhyria Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan, and we pick up right after the first book ends. The first book was Theft of Swords, and this one took me just a little longer to get into. I jumped right into the first book. This one, it took me a little longer to warm up to it, I guess. Both books have just been fabulous so far. High fantasy, and they are high stakes fantasy. And our main two have got one of the best bromance relationships I've ever read in my life. Their little banter back and forth. One of them is kind of dark and brooding, and the other one is just this gracious-hearted man, and he also has quite the sense of humor. And so the two of them are just wonderful together, and I'm really having a good time. So I've already got the third book on hold, but I completed a mammoth for March of the Mammoths, Rules of Civility, and this is by Amor Towles. I read Gentlemen in Moscow probably might have been 3 years ago, but I'm gonna say 2 to 2.5 years ago. I read Gentlemen in Moscow, and I love that book. I love it. It is slow, I understand that. It's mundane, I understand that. I love it. I did not love this book. Rules of Civility takes place, it begins at least, in 1967 as our main character Kate goes to see an art exhibit of photography. The photography is an exhibit of photos that were taken in 1937 to 1939 in New York City. She was born in New York City, raised in New York City, is still living in New York City. And the photos were taken on the subway secretly. And she happens to recognize a person that is in 2 of those photographs. And she reveals that she was friends with that person at that time, and then the book flashes back basically, and she begins to tell us of this relationship that she had at that time in her life and how it came about and what were the results of it and all of that kind of thing. And even though I enjoyed so much of this book, and I found Kate to be a very honest and integrous kind of person, the beauty of naivety, the beauty of the mundane was not in Rules of Civility the way it was in A Gentleman of Moscow. And so, even though I liked the Rules of Civility, I did not love it. All right, now I'm going to tell you about my absolute favorite book that I have read so far this year. This is a book that was recommended by a gentleman on Shelley Swearingen's channel. She has been doing her little Sunday videos where she's interviewing people about certain kinds of books. And Peter, who is not a booktuber, doesn't have his own channel, I'm pretty sure that's what Shelley said, but he was on there to discuss a book that he felt was just an all-time favorite. And the book is by Niall Williams, and it's called This Is Happiness. And you want to talk about mundane. This is mundanity at the very, very best, the most beautiful of mundanity. And we are being told a story that I think is probably semi-autobiographical. It's fictionalized, but it sounds and it reads very much like it could be autobiographical. So we are following a 17-year-old No, and it's short for Noel, and he is a seminary dropout and has come home to his grandparents' village of Faha, Ireland, to kind of regroup and just make sure that this is the path that he wants to take. And he wants to just kind of rediscover himself, and or even at 17, I would say, discover himself. And so he is in this little village that has no electricity, is still kind of living in the dark ages, even though it's 1958. People still come to church in wagons and buggies, or they walk, and the village is very tiny, just a couple of shops and a couple of pubs, and it's the story of that summer, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic. I fell in love with these people. I fell in love with this place, and this is exactly the slice of life kind of book that I just wrap my heart around, and this was not a disappointment in any kind of a way. I just loved it. So that is that. I did forget to tell you about a middle grade book. I'll tell you about it really quick. It's called The Apothecary. It is by Maile Malloy, and it's the first book in at least a duology. I don't know if it'll be more than that. This was about a young American girl who has moved to London with her parents, is in a new school, meets the boy from around the corner whose father is an apothecary. But come to find out, he's much more than that. And he ends up disappearing, and he leaves clues for his son, who has become a really good friend. And so our girl main character and the son of the apothecary become detectives, basically, to find what has happened to his father. And we have some other kids that are introduced into this, and you really do have to suspend your disbelief in this one, but it is very fun, and I enjoyed it well enough to want to read the next book. And I think that will do it for what I have read. Right now, I am in the middle of, did I tell you about the other ones? So The Genius of Willie McMichael, This Is Happiness, and was there another one? Oh, and Lullaby of the Woman of the Mountain all fit in to the Irish readathon. And then Pridane Chronicles are set in a mythological Wales, and so they are for Davathon. And then I already told you about March of the Mammoths. I already told you about middle grade March books, and several of them fit in for March Mystery Madness as well. So all of the readathons that I have been involved in this month have been going really well, and I am making headway in all of them. And I think that's everything, you guys. I'm gonna try to edit this now and get it up on the channel so that you guys can see what I've been up to. Crossing our fingers that it all goes well. And I will be back very soon, because I'm gonna record another video, I think, right after this one. It's Tag Tuesday, but I think what I'm gonna try to do is show you a little bit of a book haul. I wanna make sure that I don't get too far behind in showing you those. So I think I'm gonna do a book haul. So we'll see you very soon. Thanks for coming today, you guys. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out with me. Let me know what you're reading down in the comments. Let me know if you've read anything that I mentioned here, what you thought about it, and I will talk to you again very soon.